Justified, Season 1, Episode 12, Fathers and Sons. This is the episode in which, this is kind of like a part 2 of, from what I'm told, 4. We're definitely reaching a little bit more towards some string continuity here. I don't know how to summarize the events of the episode. Raylan decides to pull in Arlo. Arlo decides to screw over Raylan. Ava decides to be a whiny twat. Winona does something she probably shouldn't have. A bunch of stuff happened. What do you want from me? Oh, I know what you want from me. I'm sorry. I do apologize. Yeah, exactly, Lord Harriman. Everyone just kind of doesn't make a lot of great decisions in this episode, which fits neatly into the episode's theme, which we'll talk about extensively because it shows up constantly. Holy crap. We'll talk about the theme in a minute, though. You're probably thinking, oh, the theme is fathers and sons, right? No. Now, I'm going to pause real quick, especially for those of you watching on the VOD. I am still in the middle of recovering from being rather sick. Sick, plus allergies, plus lack of sleep from daylight savings time. All of which has absolutely hit me like a hammer to the face this week. So, I'm still recovering. So, I do apologize. I'm going to try to keep my sniffles and my coughing to a minimum. So, let's go ahead and look at the episode previously on. I'm sick of these. I'm sick of these. Whatever. Negative to story. Moving on. So, Arlo is actually sitting down with the chief taking a formal statement. Now, for those of you who don't understand the significance of that, that's, for all intents and purposes, the thing you do when you're officially, not only in witness protection, but you're officially consigning to being an agent of the federal government. Now, I know that sounds like a big flashy title, but that's because it kind of is. The rules actually apply a little bit differently when you're a federal agent, even if you are someone who is acting as, for example, a snitch. This is one of the reasons people were so upset about the fact that their CI got killed in a previous episode, because the rules apply a bit differently when you're a confident informant. That's a good question, Jesse Ward. Let's come back to that in a minute, though. But, so he's sitting down. They're talking about it. Real quick. Cops are very much allowed to lie to you, Lord Harriman. That's the problem. But if you've got the chief of a deputy marshal who is actually taking down written statements, that's not, I don't want to say that's binding, but we're past the point where you can back out of that, if you know what I mean. Which is funny because at one point, Arlo portrays himself as someone who thinks he can just get away by squealing on some stuff that happened years ago, and that's the end of the deal. Now, that is a thing, that can be a thing, but that's obviously not what they were going for here, and Arlo surely is smart enough to recognize that. So I find myself wondering if Arlo legitimately is that stupid, or, far more likely, if he's a lying scumbag. That brings me to my secondary theme for this episode. Arlo lies constantly. I'm not sure he says anything truthful in this entire episode. And I mean that. So, real quick, Raylan and the chief both bring up RICO, R-I-C-O. RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations. It was an act passed under Nixon, of all people, back in the 70s. Now, I just wanted to talk about this super quick, because for those of you not familiar with this, organized crime, I really don't want to get into this topic in depth, so let's zoom the camera out a lot. Organized crime was a much bigger problem before this act was passed. It's not the only thing that was really a big pushback against organized crime here in the States, but it is one of the big markers on the road, right? It's one of the big wins for not organized crime. Because prior to this, there was just not enough teeth to legally go after people under certain circumstances or under certain providences, especially since organized crime usually doesn't care about things like jurisdictions. So this law was put into place, and normally if I say something like they passed a law to give the government more sweeping ability to prosecute someone, that probably sounds like a bad thing. But historically speaking, this law and the act that it is has actually been used surprisingly well in terms of bringing down the overall power. In fact, it was critical in taking down the 5 families back in the early 80s. Funny fact, though, the first time this law was ever actually implemented was 9 years after it was passed into law. I got one other little anecdote for you here before I move on. I do want to say thank you, Shirley Only Mikey. Very much appreciate the sub. Always appreciate, and I do apologize for being a little snuffly right now. If you want to put that towards up to 3 things of your choice for increasing future interest, please let me know. Oh, Jesus. Hi, Berenian. Thank you very much. You know the question. Always appreciate Berenian. Thank you. I'm going to get bombarded, aren't I? Yeah, Jeff Bezos, he just keeps not giving me money. It's weird. You'd think his only son... All right, so the other little anecdote I got to share with you. Obviously, it's been used against crime families. It's been used against several actual mafia organizations. But my personal favorite is the RICO Act, which is, I remind you, specifically an act designed to go after organized crime, has successfully been used. Oh my God. I want you to see my face, because I want you to understand how much this amuses me. Has successfully been used against FIFA. Some of you may have heard me badmouth FIFA every time I've ever mentioned them. But on the off chance you haven't, there's a reason I call them an organized crime organization, which I know is redundant. It's because they are! Anyways. Thank you, Venters. Always appreciate. I will jot that down later, because I have the ability to do so. Ugh. Yeah, I know, it sounds like a joke, right? It really isn't. Alright, so. Crypt of the Necrodancer, Evil Genius 2, Loop Hero. You got it, Brennian. Try not to cough. So, Arlo shows up. Oh, you got it, Shirley Only Mikey. Thank you again. I do appreciate it. Especially right now, as I'm not even able to stream normally because... Like, you ever try streaming in this state? Because I have. It sucks. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be complaining about now. I mean, like, you know, doing my usual 8-hour streams. So, yeah, this is a funny little tie-in. You really... I mentioned that Arlo's a scumbag. And I'm going to keep repeating it, because he is... The worst character in the show. That's not quite what I mean. He's a well-acted, villainous monster. He's like Ducat over on Deep Space Nine, right? As opposed to Ava, who is someone who is very quickly getting to the point of me wanting her to be off my screen. Like, we're getting there with her. But back to Arlo. He went to Raylan. He approached Raylan, and he is the one who offered help. He's like, hey, I'd like to join witness protection. I'd like to snitch. And then when they say, oh yeah, you gotta snitch, his response is, what's the pay? Arlo? Oh, Ava's nowhere near Umbridge. Like from, I don't know, from 1 to Umbridge, Ava's over here. Like, Umbridge is kind of a high bar, you know what I mean? It's a shame, because the actress who plays her in the movies is really, really good at her job. So, then we see the Cabal for, I think this is technically the 3rd time. Maybe it's the 4th. We haven't seen a lot of them. They've been mentioned a lot. They've been part of what's going on a lot. We see some guy named Gio. I actually wrote down his name, because I don't think they said it out loud. But either way, Gio, I'm guessing Gio. He strikes me as someone who's still a little bit mid-tier. Like, you notice that? He's obviously a bigger fish than Bo. But he still insists on flying Bo down to meet him on his golf cart, or his golf course, to say, hi, I have money and wealth and power. If you screw this up, I will kill you. Okay, go home now. And that was the only purpose of the meeting. Now, that is still, in some extents, a power move, but it's still a little bit amateurish of a power move. It's someone who is not fully secure on their power base, aka middle tier, right? So, I can already feel this gentleman and his organization being built up as threat tier number 2 after we deal with Bo. Just, you know, organization-wise. But anyways, he very casually threatens Bo, and Bo... Yeah, Bo calls him out on it. Exactly. Bo just goes right back, and it's like... Now, it's funny you say that, Jesse Ward, because I was going to agree. This is probably... Like, I still have no respect for Bo at all, because he's a nobody. But he is a very stubborn nobody. He is someone who is absolutely willing to stick to his guns, even when he probably shouldn't. Which, ironically, reminds me a lot of Ava. So, Bo sticks to his guns, doesn't have any fear of the man, doesn't have any respect for him, and just says, "You're an idiot. You really brought me out here to threaten me about this. You could have done this in an email, dude." Right? Like, this can we just have an email instead of this stupid meeting? No? Okay. That being said, I do notice that Gio's two kids are portrayed much more professional and confident than most of the people involved. We'll come back to that in a minute, because they only show up twice after this. Then we cut to Ava. Ava continues to be irritating. That's literally the only note I have about this scene. Winona is obviously not super happy about the situation, but she's willing to do this for Raylan because, of course, she is. Oh, excuse me, niece and nephew. My bad. I was assuminating, just because of familiarity and I don't know, like crime family, right? I suppose that's on me for assuminating. Yeah, exactly, Lord Harriman. Ava is the annoying escort quest that Winona is putting up with. And that's not even a joke, because it's actually interrupting her marriage a bit. Not a little, but it's like another needle in a marriage that's already had a few hits to it. It's like, And so we see a bit of, I can't even remember his name. I feel so bad. Winona's husband. He's like, "Hi. Bye." And Winona's like, "Hey, you should stay here." And Ava's like, no, I'm a moron. Because just like in an escort quest, the NPC you're escorting has absolutely no survival mechanics. I want to be very clear about this, because we've actually talked, we usually talk about game design on this show. For those of you not familiar with, hi, I'm the lore runner. I mostly cover games. But the biggest reason why escort quests tend to be irritating, the biggest reason, there's like 7, but the biggest reason is because the thing being escorted does not try to live. It just blindly walks into danger and it doesn't like have any mechanism in place for keeping itself alive. It doesn't have a self-heal or a defense or a dodge mechanic or the ability to fight back, or it aggroes too much, or it doesn't understand that you're in combat, and therefore it keeps moving on and aggroes more things. This is true in TIE Fighter, this is true in World of Warcraft, this is true in Fable. It doesn't matter the genre of the game. And doesn't that sound like Ava? She is just, oh my god. She is just this, so, excuse me. So Arlo, this is funny. I actually like, there's this great scene, Gomez, who I continue to enjoy. He continues to be one of my favorite recurring side characters in this show. Gomez is, as usual, very professional and very to the point. Okay, you're offering me something, but I can't take it. I'd love, and you can tell, he doesn't have to say it, you can tell just by the way he's talking. He would like to take Arlo up on his deal to be a snitch, but Arlo isn't offering him anything solid, and so his response is, "You want me to go to my boss and say, hey, this dude might help us out, give us a ton of money and support, and we'll make it..." No. Now, Gomez is willing to give and take a little, because he's not an idiot. In fact, he's probably the person who's best at his job in the entire show, which, you know me, I tend to gravitate towards professionalism. So, Gomez is like, no. And then Arlo tries to scam him. I love this. If I could just sneak in here really quick. We know that Bo is demanding $50,000 from Arlo. So Arlo says, wait, did I say Gomez? I even wrote down Gomez. Why did I write down Gomez? Why did I write that down? Oh, that's why. Okay, what's his... Hang on. God damn it. One moment, please. Hit the stream breaks. Now we gotta go down the rabbit hole. Granted, I am pretty out of it, but I didn't think I was that out of it. I did enjoy some music while I researched something really quick. Actors. That's why I wrote down Gomez. The guy who plays Vasquez is named Rick Gomez. So what I did, because I'm watching this on Amazon, I paused, pulled up the cast list, because what Amazon, for those who haven't seen it, what Amazon will do is it'll show the cast of whoever's on the screen at the time, or for a scene, for example, and I'll pull up the cast list and say, aha, it's Gomez! But it's not formatted super intelligently, so if I don't know if he's Vasquez, the actor, or Gomez, the actor, so I wrote down, Vasquez! That's what I thought happened, but I wanted to double check myself. I'm not that stupid. I'm just slightly stupid. Vasquez is like, look, whatever. And Arlo says, I'm going to need 100. This is going all the way back to the bomb under the table rules of suspense, which I've talked about many, many times. This isn't a suspense situation, but you'll notice that the only person involved in this scene who isn't Arlo, who knows that Arlo is trying to BS them for $50,000, which is not a small amount of money, is us. I mentioned that because things like that is something that people underestimate and devalue in fiction. Snippets and peeks into when the character is being honest or when the character is being sincere. I'm saying this wrong. Let me walk this out. Let me do this from a different direction. Let's say there's a character and they're nice and they're smiley and they're happy and they've got this game face on. And the way I'm talking this up, you already see where I'm going with this, because when they get home late at night, there's no one else around. They then reveal that they eat puppies, right, or something horrible. They really like the sequel trilogy. I don't know. And the only person who sees that is us. It's a way to establish a character in a way that's more concrete. Because anything a character says can be a lie, or misinformation, or misconstruement, or just said in confusion, or whatever, right? But what they say, what they act, how they mean, when only the audience knows, that's a way to actually establish a character, as opposed to all the layers of bullcrap. And that's especially important for a character like Arlo, who, we've already talked about this, lies his freaking teeth out. Because Arlo just lies so much. Oh my god, we're not on random. I just recognized that. Exactly, Raylan. We get to see just how much bullcrap Raylan had to deal with while growing up. Alright, one moment. I'm sorry. I mean, that's my job, Lord Harrimont. I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. Also, bail in for life. No, I'm joking. You convinced me on that one. Okay, I think I can talk again. So, this perfectly establishes the kind of person Arlo is. Honestly, better than anything else has. And as is pointed out by Jesse, where we continue to see just how much of a scumbag this guy is. Wait, what bullcrap bit? Other than... So... Then Arlo tries to go hard. Actually, hang on, let me rewind a second. This is a great scene. As much as I despise Arlo as a person, he's a great character, and he's brilliantly acted. I also have to mention that, obviously, Vasquez is great, and we have the Chief, and we have Raylan. The only way you can make this scene better is to somehow shove Boyd and maybe Winona into it somehow. I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll workshop it. But I love a lot of little tidbits. Give me 100. I'll get you 20. He didn't ask for 20. Yeah, what are you going to offer to work off the extra? I love how Vasquez, who probably in his professional career as a freaking attorney for the federal government, probably has put up with enough bullcrap in his life that even if he can't tell Arlo's lying, he's just, he knows the type, right? So, no, you'll get 20 and you'll like it. Then, Arlo says, blanket immunity. Okay. And the funny thing is the hesitance on that, because blanket immunity frickin' means it. Asking for blanket immunity means you have something worth selling. It's what that really boils down to. And apparently they really, really do want to bring down Boyd and Bo. And again, the aforementioned CI is kind of a big part of that. So yeah, okay, fine. Blanket immunity, sure. You're going to have to wear a wire. No wire. Okay. How's the coffee here? Bad. I love that. Both of them just immediately. Bad. That's a good question, Von Falkenstein. Did you know that we not only have Tabletop Thursday every Thursday, but we had it as recently as this most recent Thursday? Shame on you, Von Falkenstein. Anyways. Thank you, Bregman. So, here's our first real showcasing of the theme of the episode. Arlo tries to go hard. He has an interesting approach. What he does is he first tries to insist he's the victim. Then he riles Raylan up to get him thinking less straight. Then he uses a direct insult to put Raylan in a weakened position, to make Raylan seem like the unreasonable one here, by directly insulting his mother. Then Raylan comes up, and then he actually puts down the line, I ain't wearing no damn wire. I bring that up because I've seen this tactic used since I was a kid. It's something I talk about a lot. It's actually really disgusting how common this is. The whole tactic is whatever they're saying, whatever insults they're throwing, whatever they infer or imply, none of that's the point. And because none of it's the point, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't get to you. Like I've given that speech before. It's insults, right? It's insult words. They don't care. They don't mean it. It doesn't matter. The whole point is to get to the actual point, which is either to cause harm or to be amused, or in this case, to make a point. And Arlo's point is, I'm not wearing a wire. Here's the problem. Raylan has demonstrated, Raylan is used to thinking on his feet clearly and reasonably, intelligently, sanely when people have guns trained on him. We've seen this. So Raylan doesn't break. He doesn't actually fall for it. He says, all right, bye. This is the theme of the episode. I call it hardlining. I don't know if that's the proper term for it, and I do not care. Hardlining is when you, in a social interaction, in some kind of interaction with some other person, you hardline, you say nope, and you try to be the winner of this particular engagement. It kind of boils back down to that domination theme I talked about all the way back in episode 1. This is the line. I'm not crossing it. Who's going to flinch first, right? Who's going to dodge first? It's like playing chicken, except in a more social example. Raylan wins this engagement because he says, all right, I'm not bowing to your demands. Go walk, see if I care. Now, an interesting tidbit is that the chief doesn't countermand him immediately. This is correct, because even if you disagree with something your subordinate or your equal or even your superior says, when you're in... Basically, when you're in the operation, when you're on the mission, when you're in the battle, whatever it is, you don't voice that out loud in front of the target or the enemy or the rest of your troops. You know why? Because it undermines your authority. Now, later, quietly, in private, okay, so I don't agree with what you said at all, and here's why, ... That's fine. But yeah, you do not demoralize when you're in the moment. That's absolutely correct. That applies in a lot of circumstances. If I'm in a business meeting, and I've got the amazing Bregwin right here at my side, and Bregwin says something, and I'm like, ugh. I need to not immediately countermand her, because that's just going to immediately, it's going to diminish her position. It's going to make it seem like she doesn't know what she's talking about, or that she doesn't have the authority that she does. So in the moment, I go with it. Then after the, let's cause a pause. I'm going to go grab some donuts. You want some donuts? Cool. So I get up, I go grab some. Hey, Bregwin, can you come with me for a sec? And then in private, I'm like, hey, Bregwin, we shouldn't do such and such because what you fig? And we can have a debate and discussion about it, but we do that in private later, not in front of the target. This applies militarily, this applies in terms of judicial, this applies in terms of just any kind of social interaction, including military. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Botland, as always. I suppose you know the question. Up to 3 things, if you'd like to. So, sorry, I don't mean to call you out, Bragwin. It's just... It'd probably be the opposite, actually. I'd say something, and then, yeah, exactly, you need to have the united front. This is true even when it comes to parenting. Under certain circumstances. Like, what will probably happen is I'd say something stupid and Bragwin would be like, And later on she'd be like, hey, boss. I'm like, yeah, what's up? And she's like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to be an idiot. She's like, that's cool. Anyways. So, Arlo walks. Now, immediately after this, the chief does exactly what I said. He pulls Raylan off aside and says, hey, you're an idiot. And Raylan's like... And the chief hardlines him. Says, no, this is how this is working. This is my op. This is my asset. I want that asset there. We could have a better asset if we had a wire, but what I want is an asset involved in this situation. So go make it happen. Okay. And Raylan, to his credit, capitulates. Now, this is something that this episode does brilliantly. One of the fascinating things about playing chicken, about hardlining it, is that most people assume the goal is to win by being the person who doesn't flinch. But that's actually not quite accurate. It would be more accurate to say that the goal is to win, and what winning is depends on the circumstances. Sometimes flinching, sometimes being the one to chicken and get out of the way of the incoming train is winning. And being able to recognize that is a valuable and important trait, especially for any mature person to have. It's one of the, and I mean this sincerely, it's one of the biggest things that a kid needs to learn on their path towards being an adult. When to flinch, when to walk, when to say, all right, you won. It's part of learning how to lose. Yeah, exactly. Last man standing doesn't matter. Yeah, you get it. So, this then cuts to a wonderful, wonderful scene. It's great. It's just Ava and Winona. And they're just sitting there. Ava has her clothes on, ready to go, and her body language is tight and controlled. Wonderful directing on this scene. She's a little fidgety, and she's clearly uncomfortable. Winona's relaxed. She's on top of this. She's not afraid of anything. She's got nothing to fear here. Winona is completely in her element, and Ava is trying very hard not to freak out. Then it gets even better, because then they're chatting, and then Raylan calls. Now, Raylan obviously gives a damn about Ava, for whatever reasons you'd like to attribute there, and says, hey, Ava starts by trying to be clever. Hey, you're right. I'm sorry. Now, that is a tactic. Now, it doesn't have to be a tactic from a perspective of manipulation, but it is a tactic. If you open an engagement, I know I talk about a lot of these like military things, but whatever, it's just the way my brain works. If you open an engagement, even just a simple social interaction with someone with, I'm sorry, you were right, what you're automatically doing is diminishing their defenses by proving that they won and lessening their need to win this new engagement. So she automatically tries that. And the reason I'm saying it's a tactic in this case is because she clearly doesn't mean it at all. She's lying through her teeth. She doesn't believe a single word she's saying. She's also a bad liar, unlike Arlo. So she's just like, you're right, I'm sorry. Anyways, I'm going to Jody's. Jody's? Pause. Notice the noticeable pause as her brain tries to come up with the lie. Oh, yeah, Jody. No, she's this person. You wouldn't know her. I'll hang out at her place until this all blows over. Okay. And then she hands the phone back to Winona without saying goodbye. I point that out. I don't mean to call anybody out here, but I've noticed not everybody notices how important those little... how important those little tiny touches of body language and what you say and how you say it matter, right? So she doesn't say goodbye. And she just hands the phone back like, all right, I'm done with the conversation. And you could just tell both on her body language and what you just did, she can't wait to not have anything to do with Raylan. Okay, cool. Then she hands it to Winona. Winona, it's like, hey, yeah, no, I guess I owe you. Very friendly, very casual. And then she bothers to go ahead and say goodbye to Raylan. Like, you know, with... I know this sounds like such a minor thing to point out, but the fact that she bothers with the courtesy says something, right? Oh, absolutely, Jesse Ward. Because the very next thing is, and I wrote this down, you guys are pretty civil for divorced people. Now, Ava's probably jealous in general because she is currently in a maelstrom of emotions and stupidity. But, and I don't say that as an insult. I mean, legitimately, I think Ava is just kind of, she's never been a long-term thinker. That's been true since her first appearance. She just does stuff. So, she's just kind of like, but now she has a bit of a focus. Oh, you two are awfully close, aren't you? Then we cut to one of our only other scenes with the nephew, Gio's nephew, and Hessler. And I finally figured out who Hessler is, but I think this is one of the only times I actually like this archetype. No, not like that. He's a Joe Pesci. Yeah, no kidding, Jesse Ward. So, for those of you unfamiliar with it, for a while there, back in the 80s and early 90s, and actually I think 70s too, Joe Pesci had an archetype. There was a type of character he'd play, and he played it in a lot of films and shows, and it was the unreasonable, angry, violent guy. You know the archetype. It's the loose cannon. And in most circumstances, they are there from an out-of-character perspective. They are there in order to stir the pot. They're there to throw things into the mix, right? Usually, however, there's not a good in-character reason for them to be there. It's actually usually very stupid for their boss to keep them employed because of how much they constantly screw things up because they're violent and dangerous and stupid, right? And they like to run their mouths. I know, right? Jesse Ward, it's great. I actually like Joe Pesci quite a bit, by the way. I'm not trying to throw shade here. He is quite good at this particular archetype. But anyways, point is, that's Hessler. Hessler's the Joe Pesci character. But for once, I think it makes sense in character, this is why I said I liked it, that he actually works for Bo, or rather that Bo keeps him around. You know why? Have you noticed that Bo doesn't have a lot of loyal people? In fact, he has what? 3? And that's if we're counting Johnny, which honestly, I don't think I would count Johnny. Johnny's definitely more on the hedge than a firm Bo loyalist. And Bo, he probably needs as much support as he can get from whatever he can get it from. Bo, quite literally, cannot afford to be picky. Also, Bo's a pervert, disgusting old man, and so is Hessler, so they can bond over that too. Anyways. Oh, good luck, Bragwin. So, I also want to mention this. Can I just read my notes about this really quick? You notice how Bo constantly has to threaten people around him? Constantly has to reassert that dominance? I mention it because the actual note I wrote was, holy crap, I get it, your dick is small. Oh, absolutely, Trihexia. Because you'll notice the guy he's working with, who is, for all intents and purposes, his superior, and with one phone call could destroy him and everything he ever knew, is someone he's deciding to threaten. Yeah, exactly. We're back with the carrot and the stick. He's just, if you don't do this, I'll hurt you. If you don't do this, you'll find out the hard way. If Captain Vice doesn't put that sub towards the Resident Evil block, it'll be over for everyone. Hang on. Gonna take a quick pause to write a few down here. So Ventures earlier put it towards Wildermyth. Now I'm curious about it. I don't even want to know the genre. It's interesting. Triangle strategy. We're going to play that multiple times, aren't we? And grid-based tactics. Block. And then Captain Vice puts it towards the Resident Evil block, which of course does include Resident Evil 4 Remake, which comes out next Friday, for anybody curious. Thank you, Captain Vice. Now, Where's my notes? There they are. So, then Ava... Ava goes back to her own house. Now, what's funny is when this happened, I paused the episode for a second and started thinking about if I could come up with something, a place that she could go to that would be stupider than going back to her own home. I did come up with one. So she goes back to her own house, and that's okay. I love the fact that she acts indignant and irritated that Beau's henchmen are crashing in her house. Ava? What? Can I be blunt? She is extraordinarily lucky that they decided to let her go. Because I actually thought it was going to go the other way. Then we have a great establishing shot. We have... not Boyd, the other one. Raylan has fallen asleep with the case files scattered over his chest. This is why establishing shots are so important. Establishing shots are all about visual storytelling and setting the scene. Well, from this little thing, he doesn't have to say anything. Raylan doesn't have to say a single word, but from this one establishing shot, we can see demonstrably just how much he still feels guilty over screwing everything up, and he did, and how much it's bothering him and how hard he's pushing himself to try and fix the situation. Definitely putting fix in quote-unquotes here. Then there's a knock at the door. Shock, Trihexia. Total shock. She would not understand it. It's Winona. My favorite thing is the first thing Winona says is, you can put the gun away. I also love how he acquiesces to that. I've already commented on this, but the amount of trust these two characters have in each other is actually kind of astonishing to see, even for people who've been divorced for some time. Now, there's some... This scene is actually interesting to dissect from a purely clinical perspective, because it's actually extraordinarily well constructed. I know, shocking that a scene in Justified is well constructed. I need to find the directors for this show and hire them. Jesus Christ. So, what happens is she comes in, and then no dialogue happens for the entirety of this sequence. For the next, 5 minutes, there's no dialogue. There doesn't need to be. Instead, the camera pans down slowly, she reaches up and pulls off her wedding ring and just kind of thumps it down. Then, she moves to kiss him. Now, notice the body language here. She is very hesitant in how she goes to kiss him, and he doesn't respond. He's like, you could just see the emotional and mental shock of, there's this pause as he can't properly process the fact that his ex-wife is kissing him. So he doesn't even respond. He doesn't kiss back until she pulls back. They look at each other for a few seconds, and then she goes to kiss again to reiterate that it's not a mistake, that it's something that's intended. That's when he responds. And it just sort of escalates from there. And they get rid of the audio of the two and replace it with the guitar strumming. Kind of like the song that's playing right now, actually. Now, then, when they finish, they don't show anything, of course. This is FX, not, oh god. Showtime? HBO, there it is. This is FX, not HBO. When she pulls away, she has a very interesting expression on her face. Like she's, I don't want to say confused, but there's definitely just a lot going on there without her saying a single word. She's just like, and you can sort of tell that regret isn't the word I want to use. That's too simple. Instead, Winona is clearly trying to process what she's doing. And she hasn't successfully processed it yet, right? Still in progress. Exactly, Jessica, where she's in turmoil, so she's just kind of, Notice that Raylan has the exact same expression on his face. The difference is when she finally leaves, he actually smiles at her as she turns to look at him. It's a very well... She walks over, very slowly, meticulously redresses herself. Then, when she's fully dressed, grabs the ring back, puts it back on, goes to leave, pauses, has to go look back at him. He gives the silly grin. She leaves. I love everything about this scene. I can't believe I'm saying that because you know how anti-romance I am falsely attributed to being. But this is a really well done scene. It's complex. It's nuanced. Neither person involved really knows exactly what they're doing. Both of them want it for probably the same reasons, and both of them have a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of conflicting emotions and thoughts, and the situation is very complex. But also, she is clearly trying to create a mental dividing line in her mind between what she's doing and who she is, right? This is very easily visually demonstrated by the ring. She walks in, nothing's happened. She takes off the ring. I am now a different person. Back to being redressed, puts the ring back on and leaves. That dividing line, the separation she's created in her brain, makes a lot of sense because that's how a lot of people tend to do things in real life. Now, I'm not a big fan of cheating either, don't mistake me. I'm not trying to endorse that. It's just, this is surprisingly well done for a scene that under most circumstances I hate. If this was in Star Trek, no offense to Star Trek, I'd probably spend the next 20 minutes dissecting how terrible this scene was, because, you know. Real quick, Not Zero, I did get your donation, and I wanted to say thank you, since you're here. I have put that down towards God of War 5 and the Book of Boba Fett. Much appreciate. Thank you. So, then Ava sees it. Damn it. Did you go die, Ava? God damn it. All right, so, just, come on. All right, so, Ava decides to go see Helen. Arlo's just standing there, revolver in hand. And Ava's like, all right, Helen, I need a gun. I thought you were gonna hang out up in Lexington. Turns out there's nothing for me in Lexington. Cute. Fairy tale. Ava and Helen dance around each other for a bit, which once again demonstrates very strongly how Helen knows how to interact with a person, and Ava absolutely does not. Ava gives everything away, and ultimately the only thing that gets Ava through this is her bullheaded stubbornness, which Helen begrudgingly respects, and finally says, fine, I'll get you a gun. Yes, I'm deliberately drawing parallels between Bo and Ava. I think the show is too. Either way, not that I'm trying to equate them as the same kind of people. I mean, Ava's an irritating person. Bo's a disgusting garbage piece of crap that needs to die. Let's keep our distinctions clear here before someone accuses me of something. So, then there's a very interesting scene. The church. Daylight savings time, Mr. Red. Yeah, the same reason that's happening right now. Yeah, anyways. Excuse me. So, that's why the announcement bot is a thing, Mr. Red. The church scene. As with so many other things in this show, it would be very easy for them to screw up the church scene. But they don't. A couple of little tidbits before I move forward. You notice Bo apparently regularly attends church? Now, I'm going to look at the topic of religion and dance around it from 50 feet away, but I just want to point that out because that kind of, and I'm going to call that what it is, hypocrisy, is the kind of thing we see a lot from people, especially from people who, how do I phrase this, don't feel bad about what they do. Put this in another term. I absolutely believe that Bo doesn't feel even an ounce of guilt for the garbage human being that he is. And so, because of that, I could absolutely see that Bo would have no problems going to church with a clear conscience. Because, what would he have to feel bad about? Amen. Yeah, exactly. There's just no. I mean, I don't know if there's no conscience there, but you get the point, right? He doesn't give a damn. He's fine. You know what? That's true, Lord Harriman. If Ava was as likable or adorable as Meryl, because Meryl's just, God, I love Meryl. She's one of my favorite characters in Dragon Age 2. In fact, the only reason she's not my favorite character in Dragon Age 2 is because Varric is the greatest character in all of Dragon Age. But anyways, so yeah, Bo's, you know, just there. Oh man. But you notice the Reverend. Now, once again, I feel like this is being done deliberately because, well, I mean, on, yeah, exactly, Imperial Star Destroyer. People like Bo give Christians a bad name. That's, bam. So, yeah, slams the Bible down on his freaking hands. The Reverend is deliberately directed to be, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can, crap at his job. Very fake. He actually, I swear to God, whoever was doing the directing asked him to sound more like a televangelist than a reverend or a pastor or whatever. So he's just, yeah, exactly, Jesse Ward. The contrast is then immediate. He invites Boyd up. Boyd, by total contrast, is charismatic. Not only knocks it out of the park and tells a very convincing and powerful tale, but when the Reverend tries to take back his seat, you know, when he's like, all right, thank Boyd, Boyd's like, give me a minute. And just takes command of the situation, as he often does. Boyd consistently demonstrates that he's actually high tier, even if he is in position of low tier. It's one of the things I like about Boyd. He reminds me a lot of Arcturus Mengsk, and I do mean that as a compliment. Mengsk wasn't always the Emperor, but even when he was just some random dude with a couple of freedom fighters at his side, he still had the exact same presence and confidence and intelligence and charisma and all the other things that made him Mengsk. That's Boyd. He may be just some dude with his own little cult off to the side, but he still has the capacity and ability to be a lot higher tier than he is. So he tells this wonderful, powerful story, gets it across in just the whole thing. He even directly references Saul, which, for those of you unfamiliar, in extreme brevity, Saul was the guy who was evil, torturing, killing, mutilating, and then Christ was like, dude, what are you doing? And Saul's like, what? Christ is like, why would you do this to me? And Saul's like, dude, I'm sorry. And then switch teams, right? Of course Boyd would attach... that's such an abbreviated version of that story. But you get the point, right? Of course Boyd would attach himself to that particular aspect of the Bible. Why wouldn't he? Think about what Boyd has done and what he's been. So, this then leads to that hardlining theme showing up like 3 times, essentially in a row. First, Bo and Boyd. This is just as amusing as the last time Bo tried to confront Boyd, because Bo keeps trying to threaten. He thinks that stubbornness, right? I'm just going to keep bull rushing my way through here, and eventually, I'm going to break through this stone wall. Boyd actually wins that particular engagement. But then we immediately see the hardlining stance show up, theme show up again, very briefly, as Raylan goes and approaches some random sheriff, I don't even get her name, who is upset at what happened with Hunter. And I love how Raylan's like, all right, look. I understand that you're upset about me about Hunter, and maybe we could have a reasonable discourse about the situation, but right now I'm just trying to figure out what the hell's going on, please. He hardlines. She flinches. He moves up and is part of the let's call it what is, the sniper team. They actually brought in a TAC team on this. We've talked about this before. A TAC team is the local SWAT. They're actually paramilitary. You're supposed to bring them in when it's something serious. A dude holding a live grenade in a public, bar or any restaurant, really. Yeah, that's serious. So, tracks. Then we see Lucky and Arlo. And Lucky just kind of keeps playing with the pin. There's an old saying. Sometimes talking needs to talk, But sometimes talking needs to stay silent. I know that sounds strange, but what I mean by that is every now and again, the best way you can talk to someone is by shutting up. By just being there and listening. You notice Arlo does this surprisingly well. Just sits there. I'm just going to have a drink. I'm just going to go through this. And Lucky just starts talking. Of course he does. That's how that works. Just starts talking about how he survived and his lung issue and all that fun stuff. It's a very good scene. In fact, it's actually my favorite scene of the episode. It is a little bit strange because it very much comes out of absolutely nowhere. But it does help to establish several things. First of all, I actually wrote this guy's name down. Joshua Bitton actually plays Lucky and does a really good job of portraying someone who is dealing with mental trauma. Pro tip for anybody who's getting into acting. When you're trying to portray mental trauma, don't go, wailing, gnashing of teeth. Don't do that. People who are actually dealing with legitimate mental and emotional trauma, they sound normal. They sound calm. They sound lucid as they talk about horrible, unpleasant things. Because the whole point of that particular type of mental trauma is they have difficulty processing it. I've actually done a little bit of research into this recently, even. Because we are still beginning to understand and developing our understanding as a species of how to deal with this kind of post-traumatic stress and other related mental symptoms and difficulties. So, yeah, there's just this normal, empty tonelessness as they talk. And the guy, again, Joshua Bitton, like I said, I wrote down his name, because he does a really good job of that. He's just talking through it. Then Arlo lies. Now, what's funny is we don't know that in the moment, but he starts telling this story about Vietnam, and he was probably about 5 words into his first sentence when I started writing down the thing. Do you think Arlo's making this up? It's actually right there in my notes. Now, whether that's acceptable or not, that's a little bit more debatable, as we've actually already seen in this very show, and as can be debated in real life, sometimes a lie is actually the most beneficial thing in the moment. It depends. But yeah, as Jesse Ward points out, and I was going to point this out too, watch the body language of Arlo. Arlo constantly, as he's in the middle of the thing, he keeps looking, and he keeps gauging, trying to figure out, does Lucky believe him? Is Lucky responding to this? Because here's the deal. This is my take and my opinion. I don't think Arlo has a redeemable bone in his body. And I mean that. I think that he was going there for a drink, that this situation happened, and Arlo was trying to think of the best way to get out of it without any loss to what he cares about, which is the only bar. He actually mentioned this in this scene. It's the only bar he can get a drink at, because he lives in a dry town. And he cares about himself. So what I think he did here was I think he took the path to winning for himself to make sure the bar doesn't get injured. Because let's be honest, if he didn't talk Lucky down, Lucky's probably just going to let the pin go and of course, to save himself now that he's committed to this action. So he lies not to save Lucky or to talk him down, but to save himself in the bar. That's just my take. But that's the Arlo I've been seeing thus far. Oh yeah, gotta get those brownie points with the feds, because you'll notice the first thing he says to Raylan, without Raylan even actually opening his mouth, is, I'll go ahead and wear your damn wire. Cute. Arlo strikes me as someone who's always playing an angle. I'll admit I kind of hate those kind of people, because I've met those kind of people in real life, and they disgust me. But I feel like that's Arlo to a T. He's always looking for an angle. I noticed that, Jesse Ward. Cute little thing there. I'm also going to admit something that's probably going to get me made fun of. When Lucky breaks down and starts crying, that actually got me. I started crying a bit, too. Because what we're seeing, and again, wonderful praise to the guest star, is that emotional breakdown. I like to think of it as a dam. And you got all these emotions over here. They're not getting processed. They're not getting pushed through. The brain doesn't know what to deal with them. So they're here. They're here, okay? And when this dam finally goes, a lot of things can happen. A lot of them are bad. But in this circumstance, it was just he let himself feel. He let himself deal, and he started processing. He started processing all the grief and all the fear and all the pain and all the guilt. And of course, he just starts sobbing, and naturally, they walk him out, and he obviously doesn't kill himself in the bar. And I do like the question, why me? Why do I get to live? Because goddamn do I understand that question. It's pretty much 101 survivor's guilt. Why me? What's funny is Arlo's response is straight from actual therapist textbooks. I looked this up. The best possible response to that is not to try and make them feel like they're special, or to make them feel like they're not special. Both of those approaches are generally dangerous. You immediately counter it with a question of your own. Why not you? Invert the question on them. What makes you so good, bad, or in between that you should have died, that you shouldn't have lived? Exactly, Jesse Ward. I was just about to say, Can I pause for a second? One of the things I talk about a lot when it comes to discussing and analyzing media is the trust factor. Factor, in this case, being the mathematical version of factor, which is a multiplicative thing. So the more trust you have in the writing, directing, acting, etc., the creators of a work, the more that trust factor exists, so the more you can magnify how much you can read into and analyze in the work. In a work that has a very low trust factor, something this nuanced is probably not intended. But in something like Justified, which has been doing their homework consistently, has excellent writers, excellent directors, and excellent actors, this is probably very deliberately a hint that Arlo has been going to therapy. Well, okay, we know he's been going to therapy, but that he has been paying attention to those therapists, and he's probably literally repeating what those therapists have already told him. Little details. That's what I love about this show. So, let's scroll down a little bit. Sorry, hang on. So, Arlo says he'll wear the wire, playing the angle. Meanwhile, this is funny because that trust factor is going to come up here in just a second. Hey, Brigman, up top. Or maybe the hand without the ring. There we go. What'd you eat, by the way? What'd you manage? So then Ava decides to approach Bo with a gun. How many of you have ever handled a shotgun? I have, as I've mentioned before. But I bring this up for a very specific reason. That actually sounds good, Brigman. Because there's a really common mistake in Hollywood. It's the... Now, this actually varies. There's some more nuance to this. But generally speaking, if you do the... What you have done is you've just ejected your live round. And now you have to actually... Yeah, you've just wasted ammo. You don't actually do anything with it. You actually now less prepared to shoot someone than you were before. Now, that was made popularized by Hollywood for obvious reason. It's a good sound. It's a good punctuating sound. So, you willing to risk that? You know, there's a reason why people do that. Exactly, Jesse Ward. That second click is just, yeah. But the reason I bring that up is because trust factor. Now, if this was a show with a low trust factor, I would assume that this is because the show is stupid, just like most of Hollywood is. But because we have such a high trust factor, I think it's because Ava's stupid. I think she literally just ejected the cartridge and now is no longer prepared to shoot Bo because she watches too many movies and doesn't know how to handle a gun. And you see the difference. You see what a difference trust factor makes when analyzing a work, because that completely reshapes the scene. It also could help explain why Bo isn't particularly afraid of her. But the funny thing about this, so let's ignore that for a second. The funny thing about this is that as the two are talking, you see that bullheadedness I mentioned earlier that both are doing. She did not zero under very calm circumstances without having to do the with a gun that, by all accounts, she'd only ever used twice in her life. Excuse me, at the time, once in her life, not zero. So, yeah, no, she doesn't know how to handle a gun. You can tell that because the actress doesn't know how to handle the gun either. I'm dead serious. Pay attention to the scene again sometime. Rewatch it. Look at how she doesn't know how to hold it. She doesn't know how to brace it. She doesn't know how to aim it properly. She doesn't know how to properly check her corners. She doesn't practice proper finger safety. She does everything wrong, essentially. And of course, she decided to get this giant freaking shotgun because she wanted something for intimidation factor. Remember, she's not there to kill Bo. She mentioned this earlier and she demonstrates this here. So she's just here to hardline. She's here to try and make Bo flinch. Bo doesn't flinch because he's a mule. So Bo just pushes right back against this, and nothing really happens. Cool. Oh, absolutely, Jay Palmer. That's my point. I think that this was deliberate. I think that whoever the specific... Oh, I forget what it's called. There's a term for the people who tell someone how to handle weapons. That different types of weapons, too, on set. And their job is to explain to you, the actor, this is how you should handle this gun, because you're supposed to be playing a U.S. Marshal who's been doing this for 20 years. And you're an actor who's been doing this for 3 weeks. Might be the weapons tech. I don't know. There's actually several people, but you get my point. It's the person whose job it is to explain to you how to look like you know how to do your job. I guarantee you that person walked up to whoever plays Ava and said, all right, so here's how you're going to do this. Do this, and do this, and do this. Oh yeah, by the way, Ava should have killed Bo. That is 2 women now who I think should have killed Bo. I'm really not looking forward to being proven right, because I guarantee you I'm right. Anyways, so, then we go to Arlo having a wire. This scene's interesting. Arlo is Bo such a bad person? Yeah. I mean, I could wipe away everything else. He's a freaking drug dealer. Meth, specifically, if you want to get more into details. I'm going to be proven right that both Helen and Ava should have killed Bo. I guarantee it. You can quote me when I'm right. So, anyways. Yeah, let's not even touch that, Mr. Red. Bo's most loyal person is Hessler. Says all it needs to. So Arlo immediately sells them out to Bo. Because of course he does. It is interesting that the dynamic between Bo and Arlo is exactly the same as it was in the last episode. Bo continues to play hard. In fact, one of the things he scribbles back is, kiss my ass. But of course, Bo flinches here. Bo is the one who blinks and goes ahead and accepts, alright, fine. Such and such a place, no wire. And Arlo's like, alright, cool. Bo also then mentions the Ava thing. Raylan is just... So then Raylan goes to actually confront Ava and is like, okay, what? So she doesn't shoot him, which is amusing because the implication very clearly is that she thought about shooting him. I kind of hate this scene a little bit. Like, not really. It's not a bad scene. But it's probably the official moment at which I really start to despise Ava. Like, I haven't exactly liked her, but she just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. And I just, get off my screen. She makes this all about her. All about what she wants and what she cares about. Very selfish perspective, very childish perspective. No appreciation for nuance or subtlety. Which is, again, very simple, which is very childish. And while she... I actually, if I could just talk about this for just a second, it irritates me a little bit that the character I like the least in this show is the one whose husband regularly abused her. Did it have to be her, writers of this show? Did you have to pick her to be the moron, to be the Sora of this show? Anyways, So she has no capacity or emotional maturity to deal with any of this, and she demonstrates this repeatedly over the cutscene. Wow, cutscene. Over the scene that plays here. But then she makes the "this is my home" argument. I don't believe her. Now, I want to talk about this briefly, if that's okay with you. And if it isn't, well, then that sucks, because that's kind of my job. So, once upon a time, when I was younger, I didn't... No, she's not badly written. I just hate her. It's deliberately irritating is still irritating. Hell, Sora is well written, which is just bonkers when you think about it. When I was younger, I didn't understand the ideal, the concept of, this is my home. This is the place I'm going to stay at. This is the place I'm going to defend, and yet didn't make any sense to me. Probably at least in part because the fact that I've never had a home. That's still true, by the way. I've never actually had a place I would call home. I have had places I have stayed, places where I sleep, and places where I've lived, but I've never had a home distinction, right? But when I was covering TNG, which, God, was like 4 years ago at this point, it's a weird thought. Bajor feels like home. That was actually after I covered the TNG stuff that I'm about to mention. But yeah, there's an episode of TNG where they have to, it's season 7. It's actually a bad episode. It's the episode where they have to move the American Indians off of one planet because of the Cardassians. Do you remember that episode? Journey's End. It's a pretty bad episode. But one part that stuck with me is the surprisingly eloquent way in which they got across the idea that this wasn't the place they were staying. This wasn't where they lived, that this was their home. I also liked the fact that both Nechayev and Picard were actually kind of on the same side of that, and both of them were pushing against the Federation Council, which were actually the bad guys of that episode. But anyways, and that stuck with me. And so I put myself into the mentality of, what if I actually found a home, a real home? Roots, as Mike D'Amato puts it. And it makes the whole, I want to stick with my home perspective, make a lot more sense to me. That's still imaginary. That's still, I knew it, Jesse Ward! Resistance! Ah! It's still in the realm of imagination. I'm still playing a thought exercise, but I could see why someone would want to defend their home, why someone would want to stay at their home, why someone would want to not have to uproot themselves, right? So I'm with that idea completely. Now I'm going to try to explain why I don't think that applies to Ava at all. Now, I'm going to rephrase this whole situation. I'm going to restructure it in a way that I hope will get across my point very quickly. So, there's a house, there's parents, and there's a kid. The kid's rather happy with this place, has a couple of friends, not real friends, but kids they hang out with. They like the local soda joint, and there's a nice ice cream parlor down the street and a good park they can go play at. The parents need to move to a new place. And they need to move for a lot of complex and complicated reasons we're not even going to discuss, but because it doesn't matter. They've got their reasons. The kid's like, no, I don't want to go. I hope that explains it in simplicity, because that's Ava. She's comfortable here. She likes it here. I don't believe for a second that this is her home. In fact, you'll also notice that she only brings up the home argument after all the other arguments have already failed, including in the previous episode, by the way. Actually, 2 previous episodes, So this is like her final argument for, no, I don't want to go. Now, again, uprooting someone is a big deal, and I don't want to sound dismissive here. But she has the capacity to have backing of the court system and the U.S. Marshals in relocating her, which not a lot of people get that benefit. Some people just have to move and live with it. She also clearly is doing well for herself because she has a freaking huge house. It's actually a pretty nice setup, so I don't think she's hurting for money either, at least not at the moment. She could probably go ahead and move. Then, we have our final hardline theme of the episode, which is the conclusory scene. So we see the nephew and niece, who I never bothered to write down their names. And they're just driving down the road, chatting, da-da-da-da. Oh, there's a truck on the wet road up ahead. Now, I do want to mention once again how professional both of these two come across. You can tell that they take this whole thing a lot more seriously than most other people we've seen in this entire show. So, immediately pull the gun. Cool. And go out. Immediately draw the gun on the guy. They don't put up... This is their version of the hardline. They immediately draw a gun at someone and say, you're going to move, you're going to get off there. Get out of here right now. Go, go, go. Then they allow themselves to get distracted by the truck. Because Boyd isn't that stupid. Boyd immediately opens with the Alpha Strike. Boom. There goes all that meth. Fire in the hole. He then has his people, who are already in position and already masked, disarm and deal with the others, the two of them. Now, their reaction is almost disbelief. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Do you have any idea who you and your friends are stealing from? Or no, I'm misquoting it. Do you have any idea who you're stealing with? You and your friend... Oh, God damn it. Do you have any idea who you and your friends are dealing with? God damn it, I keep screwing up the quote. Oh, come on, Lore. You're so tired. Do you have any idea who you're stealing from? You and your friends are dead. There we go, that's the quote. Jesus, screwed it up like 5 times in a row. It's a common reaction to people who are accustomed to being in position of authority and frankly don't know how to deal with when they've been outplayed. I just point this out because, once again, I think Boyd is functionally higher tier than the Cabal, and I think this scene demonstrates that. Especially because he kneels down there, and they say, do you have any idea what you just did? Yeah. I just spared your lives. And that's how you hardline. Yeah, he's very Nico. With a few less anger problems. I would also compare him to the Joker, but that's not a great comparison. But you get where I'm going with that. So. And of course, Lord Harrowmont and I disagree on something, which it means that it's a day ending and why. I don't agree with you. I think that Ava, even as of this point in time, still isn't really thinking about things at all. Nothing about her character has indicated to me that she has even started engaging her brain. In fact, you'll notice that during the argument between her and Raylan, the first thing she tries to make it about is about Winona. Was I always just a cheap side screw for you? She doesn't phrase it that way, but she does mention how cheap I should feel, so paraphrased. Again, I'm not saying she's a badly written or even a badly acted character. Quite the contrary. Let's make that clear. Speaking of which, we should go ahead and judge. Can you get a gavel? Fathers and Sons, one episode from the end. What do y'all think? Honestly, I don't think it has the extra oomph for me. But I think I feel like I actually agree with Jesse Ward. I feel like Mr. Red, of course, is the floor. Because that's what happens to people who cross me. I'm sorry, random memory. Guy walks in, gives the boss bad news, starts looking around on the ground. Boss is like, what? The dude says, I was just looking for the plastic. Points if you get it. I get your point. I do actually get your point, Lord Harriman. A lot of people are doing very stupid things in this episode. But this goes back to that distinction of whether or not that's a good thing or not, for lack of a better way to put it. Stupidity in characters, from long years of analyzing fiction, is something you have to wield very precisely. If you just make a character stupid and that's kind of it gets grating, right? Especially if it's done for comedic effect. All I have to say is Jar Jar Binks to get across that point, but I can also mention Homer Simpson. Now, don't mistake me. Homer used to be a character, like a nuanced, interesting, fascinating character. He isn't anymore. He hasn't been for a long time. Or Neelix. Yeah, there's a lot of examples. There's in fact too many examples, which is my point. So the question I always have to bring is, it's the same as the pluses and negative system, right? Is the situation in which the characters are being stupid, there's grammar, a positive or negative? And I think in this case it actually works quite well for me. Up to and including what Winona did, which, as I mentioned, shocked me. I was like... Honestly, when she came in, I had like 3 or 4 guesses as to what Winona was going to be doing in that scene. Sleeping with her ex was not on that list. Didn't even occur to me. Or Trixie. You know what? Yeah, Trixie is a great example of a stupid character that usually works well. There's been 2 episodes where I didn't like that, but usually her being stupid is to the benefit of the episode. Wink. So, yeah, Dewey. There you go. Good example. Dewey in this show is stupid to good. Okay, so I don't think we're gonna have a lamentation at this point. Let's start chopping up the pie a little bit. We have not even had a below average episode. That is bonkers. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 oranges so far. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, and 3. Look at that ratio really quick. We're not quite done yet, but look at that ratio on that pie chart. That's insane. As I will talk about next week on videos I recorded over a month ago. But when it comes to, yeah, no kidding, Raymond. When it comes to making long-form work, whether it's a series of books, series of games, or series of movies or shows or whatever, you want... The goal is to have everything above average. Now, obviously, that doesn't work that way, but that is the goal, right? And I demonstrate this visually in the finale videos that are going live next week on Monday and Tuesday. So look at that pie chart for a second. Eject the yellow, and the other, what is that, 83.3% of that is the goal. They have successfully hit the goal 80-something% of the time. That's crazy good. Especially for a first season. I can't wait to not watch this show anymore. Anyway, so, I'm just joking. Quick announcement, just in case. I'll mention this next week, too. I do, actually, Jay Palmer. You should have seen my MLP finale. We did a lot of figures and numbers for that one. So next week is Bulletville. Obviously, the end of our Justified Streaminations. We aren't going to be going forward with Season 2 because, honestly, this show is just a little bit rough for me to deal with. But we will not be doing a Streamination on April 1st. I want to be very clear about that because because it lands on a Saturday, and it's April 1st, so of course we're not doing a Streamination on Saturday. So FYI, or on April 1st, excuse me. So FYI, we're gonna do Bulletville next week. There'll be a week off from Streaminations, and then the 8th, I think. I've actually already put all this on the website. It's already on the schedule on the website. Yeah, it looks like the 8th is when we'll be starting Arcane. For anybody who is interested in that. I'm actually have to buy a subscription to Netflix to pull through that. With luck, I will be back to streaming by Wednesday at the latest. No promises, obviously. This is a short dark, though, so... I've actually already finished most of the work I needed to get done during the short dark. It's been slowed down because sick, plus DST, plus allergies. I have the greatest timing, don't I? Because if you remember, I wasn't sick yet when I called the long dark. I was just tired. And then I was like, oh, I'm so tired. And then I'm going to start the long dark early. And the next day, hack, cough, cough, wheeze, cough, hack. Do I have like a sick radar? Is that what this is? This happened during the recent long dark, too, back in January. Anyways, news of that album rewrite airing. watch April 1st. That's all I'm going to say about that. Anyways, I'm going to chop off here and go get some work done. And some hacking and some sniffling. So, I'll see you guys.